Well, here we go. It's 1 o'clock. It's Friday. Well, 1 o'clock EST. It's Friday, and it's time for the DCPFX live stream. First things first, before we even get into it, I just want to talk about this, and this just hit this morning. Kevin Conroy. You're like, who? Kevin Conroy was the voice of Batman from the animated series from 92, I guess, on. It was funny, too, because if you look at the picture, he's, not a big, massive guy, but his voice was just amazing. He was really, for a generation, he was the voice of Batman. Him and Lauren Lester, Lauren Lester who did Robin, they brought Batman, really into the 90s, and it was just an amazing show. It was really, really great, and just sad to hear of his passing. 66 years old, so yeah. Well, let's get to starting this here. So yes, it's me. I am your host, Dave. Dave here at DCPFX. Hey, if you're new here and just this popped up saying, "Hey, here's this. Let's do this. Want to look at this live stream?" If you give me a like and a sub, I really appreciate that. But anyway, on to the stuff. So what I want to talk about today is this week. What came out was I couldn't even tell you the name of it. Was it Countdown to Dark Crisis or some sort of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths or something? DC has a real problem, a real crisis problem. But let me start at the beginning. So I'm a comic reader from the 70s. I, started reading when I was a kid, started reading when I was like 7 or 8. So I've been doing this 47 years, 48 years. It depends. I can't remember when I first started, but I do have memories going back to that. Always been a DC guy. Like DC. I always like DC. One of my favorite characters, and I've talked about this before in some other videos done, my favorite characters, and people go, it's Batman, right? No, it's Robin. At the time I was reading, he still was a decent character. It's funny, some of the things I do, some of the things that are a big part of who I am, really have come out of some early comics. I'm a huge, I was anyway, Dr. Pepper fan. And it came out of passing. I was reading Legend of the Batman, which was a 3-issue miniseries that John Byrne penciled. One of the first things he did for DC. And it was amazing. At one point, Robin and Batman are in the cave, and I could go for Dr. Pepper. So I tried it and went, oh, hey, that's pretty good. Became a Dr. Pepper fan. So I always more identified with Robin because Robin was a little more fallible. Bruce was perfect and everything else. And much like Clark as Superman is perfect. But Robin, Dick was, a little bit more human. So I always like that. So for me, as I was then growing up, in the 80s, we had the new Teen Titans, which we had, Dick Grayson, Robin leading the whole team. And it was amazing. It was a really great series. It ran for a long time until it sort of, circled the drain, and down it went. But yeah, one thing that my chat's not up. There it is. One thing that I didn't really do anything for me was, later on when new writers took over, and then we got, I think, to issue 100, and then, we've seen Nightwing and Starfire get married and everything else, and then Roy took over, and there was 30 issues that just didn't needed to be done. Anyway, that's my history with DC Comics. I'm doing it for almost 50 years. Now, the way that they did things at DC was interesting. They had their comics that came out in the 30s, like 1938 is when Superman came out in Action Comics. And then you had Batman followed by that. And then Robin joined Batman after that. And Wonder Woman. All these people came in. The Flash, all that. And it ran great for a while. And then in the 50s, the cowboy things were taking over. The Westerns taking over more. So DC Comics as superheroes sort of went, So in the 60s, they thought they would revamp everything. So with that, we got, a newer Superman, a newer Batman. But it still was, essentially, they're saying it's the same character, essentially. But then we got the Flash. Barry Allen took over as the Flash, and Jay Garrick, was the older one. And it was a weird sort of dichotomy. We even had new Green Lantern. So you had Hal Jordan as Green Lantern, and he's science-based, versus Alan Scott Green Lantern, which was magic-based. Now, it's funny. I made a joke about this on one of the series Star Treks. They were talking about comics, things like that, and they're talking about the various weaknesses. And whereas Alan Scott had a weakness to wood, and the modern Green Lanterns had a weakness to yellow, I just said in a little quip, yes, you can take out any Green Lantern with a yellow number 2 pencil. Anyway. So what they did with this in this issue here, this is very seminal. This is called Flash of Two Worlds. What it was is that when Barry Allen became the newer Flash, science-based Flash, a little more science-based Flash, of course, Jay Garrick was science-based as well, he inhaled hard water fumes and woke up and he had super speed. Okay. A little simpler back then. So anyway, Barry Allen was inspired by Jay Garrick. And like, okay. So DC sort of went off saying, okay, this is the old and this is the new. But then they had a problem with how they're going to do this. So in this issue, Flash of Two Worlds, Barry Allen meets Jay Garrick. And that's where they start talking about the multiverse. Basically what they're saying is the current world that they're on with the newer Barry Allen Flash and and the newer Batman, newer Flash, that's Earth 1. The older stories, Earth 2, which interesting because the older ones came first and they should be Earth 1. Anyway, that's how they're naming it. Oh, by the way, our world, where all these things are just characters in a book, in a comic book, Earth Prime. Get to that in a minute. So they said, oh, here are these two worlds and they can meet up. Over time in the 70s, you got it so that you had the meeting of the Justice Society from the 40s and the Justice League in the 70s. And they met up and they had these great little adventures. And some of them were called Crisis. There was one, late 70s, one that really sticks in my mind. They met on the satellite because that's the way the Justice League was, that big satellite in orbit. And someone died. Mr. Terrific, the original Mr. Terrific, Terry Sloan, kind of a cheesy costume, red jacket, had fair play here. Oh yeah, Time Lord. In training. Anyway, he was an Olympic level athlete and he thought he would just fight injustice and he would do that. And then Michael Holt took that up later on in life or in history. Anyway, they were fun. They met up. They had little good times and they had little adventures and it was all a hoot. Well, it got after a while that they had all these great ideas, but, well, that doesn't fit in continuity. What are we going to do? That doesn't work and that doesn't work. They started spinning off different worlds. So you had Earth 1, Justice League, Earth 2, Justice Society, Earth S, all the Shazam characters, which at that point were called Captain Marvel, but there's a fight between Marvel, in the name Captain Marvel. So Shazam is the only character who can't say his name because, well, that triggers his powers. So you had Earth S. You had Earth X, which the Nazis won World War II, and the freedom fighters who left Earth 2 went to go fight them on Earth X. You had Earth 3, where rather than the Justice Society, you had the Injustice Society. So rather than all those heroic figures, you had one heroic figure, Alexander Luthor, or Lex Luthor. He was the only one. He married Lois Lane, and that comes up later. But you had Ultraman, and he got his powers from exposure to kryptonite. You had Owlman, and you had Superwoman, and Johnny Quick, and all these things. So you had all these different Earths. And it got to the point where it was confusing. What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? What are we going to bring together? And they decided then, Marv Wolfman and George Perez, they pitched it to it. They were going to do Crisis on Infinite Earths. And what they wanted to do was take all of these worlds and combine them into one. Very great story. 12 issues, phenomenal. It was really well done. And in the end, that was a race, and that was a race, and that was a race. Robin from Earth 2, who never really left Batman's side. So Dick Grayson in Earth 2, he grew up and he became Robin. His costume was atrocious. It was a Batman costume. It had a bat wing in it with a circle with a red R in it. Other times he had like a really gauche, bright red, bright green, bright yellow costume, reminiscent of the Robin costume, but like no. So all that got concatenated together. So you had one Dick Grayson. But the problem with that is when they threw away all that history, there were leftovers. There were holdovers. Power Girl didn't come from Krypton, or did she? She's Atlantean princess, or is she? Really confusing history there. And there's things that just didn't really work out. But at the end of Crisis, you got some cool characters. Like we got Booster Gold, which love Booster Gold. Great character. His second series was phenomenal. Anyway, getting ahead of myself. So Crisis did what it could and cleaned up a lot of stuff. Then they had to, at that point, they released the history of the DC Universe. It was a maxi series of 2 books, like really well done on the Baxter paper. And it basically said, here's where it started and here's how it ends. And it gives a little bit of the future. So they had to rewrite some characters like Commandy, who was the last boy on Earth, turned into another character who was sort of written into it because they found him in Command Bunker D, so it became Commandy. So things like that went a little bit squirrely. But there still were holes. There were holes in it, and it just wasn't quite right. Things weren't really coming together, and it just, yeah. So then they thought, let's see what we can do about fixing some of that. So from there, we ended up then a couple years later, this is in the 90s now. So the Crisis was in 1984, 85, I believe, and Zero Hour was in the 90s. What they did was, at this point, Hal Jordan had gone rogue, and he became an evil guy called Parallax. And that is retconned later that he was possessed by the spirit of the Yellow Lantern. And less about that, the better. Zero Hour was trying to rewrite all the time hiccups. So we had 6 different origins for Hawkman that got combined into one, and it wasn't very good. And then after this, we had some really bad stories, like Fate was terrible with Jared, whatever his name was. Other things were just not well done, but it was an attempt to rewrite history again by sort of clearing up the timeline, but it still really didn't do anything. It didn't really go anywhere by way of, it didn't clear up a whole lot. And I'm saying that as someone who's been reading for a long time. Is like, I have this history in my head. I don't understand where this is going. It's okay, you've done that, but this still doesn't clear up the headaches you have, what's going on with that. And we had other things that came up. And then after Zero Hour, we got into, it seems like they want to do a Crisis all the time. So what do we have now? Oh, we have Identity Crisis. And this was a gut punch. They, and I'm not going to say spoilers on these because these have been out forever. Identity Crisis came out a long time ago. The elongated man's wife is killed, and they're thinking that people are after supers or people after capes, depending on how you want to put it. And it turns out it was the Atom's wife who went a little bit crazy. Figured if she threatened, a family member of that, she'd be able to get back with her husband because they were, separated. They're divorced at this point. She went loopy. She got involved with Eclipso, and just, the less said about that, the better. But it was another crisis. Here we go, another crisis. Oh boy, another crisis. And it had some really bad lingering effects, as in Dr. Light, who was a lightweight character. He was kind of for a while, and then when the Titans got to him, or they put him into Titans, he became more of a joke. And then they retconned it that when they mind wiped him in order to have them forget, identities of people, because that happened in the 70s. They would be able to figure out who everyone was. It changed his mind, so he became more ineffective. And I liked him better as an effective character. In this, he rapes, Sue Dibney, and just it's grimdark. And it's for the sake of being grimdark. It didn't make any sense. It was like, okay, yeah, I read it. So anyway, if we go back to Crisis, at the end of Crisis, what's left is after they defeat the big bad, which is the Anti-Monitor. He's trying to turn the whole multiverse into the antimatter universe. So the whole matter universe and antimatter, so he has more power. They stop him. There's 4 leftovers at the end of this. As everyone gets back to the correct universe, you've got Superman, Kal-El, not EL, but just L, of Earth 2. You have Superboy of Earth Prime. I don't even know why they created this character. Maybe they created it just for fun in around the time of Crisis. So he existed, and he was, Kal-El of Krypton. He was raised as Clark Kent, because he was found by his parents, the Kents, and they said, let's call him Clark Kent. That'll be funny, won't it? And at the end, he has powers. I was like, oh, are you kidding me? Anyway, he's left over. And then Alexander Luthor, who was the son of Lois Lane and Lex Luthor from Earth 3, he is sent through the antimatter void. He becomes part matter, part antimatter, so he's able to help the good guys win against the Anti-Monitor, and Lois Lane from Earth 2. So there's 4 of them left over, and they're in a pocket universe. It's made nice at the end of Crisis, where it's heaven that they can go to and they can live there. The problem is there's 4 of them, and that's it. And so Kal-El has his wife, but Alexander has nobody, and Superboy has nobody, and they just get kind of. So when we get to Infinite Crisis, they're trying to roll back the hands of time. Essentially, they should have gone to 0 hour. They're trying to right the wrongs because they're seeing that everyone it's the darker version of the universe. So let's try and reset this. Oops, sorry. Try and reset this and do this over so that it's better. Yeah, it wasn't better. It was a very bad. Well, it wasn't bad. I just didn't like it. It's getting to the point where, it's, if you don't like it, what's the point of it? Like, you write it because I'm going to write this, but half the stuff they do in these crises all get retconned out anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So Infinite Crisis went and it did its thing. At the end of it, Superman of Earth 2 is dead, and Superboy Prime is evil, and all these things. And Alexander Luthor tried to make his universe come back, and that didn't work. And it ended up with retiring and killing a lot of characters. The only thing I find funny too is if we go through all these crises, they're trying to make a permanent change, and they never do. I can't tell you the number of times Jay Garrick has retired, said, that's it, I lost my powers, I'm not going to be Flash anymore, I'm done. Oh, they're back. Well, that's it this time, I'm done, I can't run anymore. And they're back. Oh no, his leg was just sliced, he'll never run again. Oh yeah, I'm back. And it just, yeah. They say that you can't have a crisis without a Flash. And in this one too, we had another Flash. We had Bart Allen as the Flash, I believe. Now, this is all sort of jumbling together in my head. I think that's what it was. They took Superboy Prime into the Speed Force, and he got out, and there you go. See, yeah. Then we got to Final Crisis. This came out near the tail end when I was just about done with collecting. That's coming up in a second. The whole goal of this miniseries was they killed the New Gods just before it, and this was to bring them back. Okay. The less said about Final Crisis, the better. One good thing that did come out of it, though, is Legions of Three Worlds was George Perez doing all the versions of the Legion. That was amazing. It was fantastic. I loved it. That part of it was good, but the rest of it wasn't very much to my liking. Anyway, you can read it if you want to. It leads me to Inigo Montoya, Final Crisis. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. Because guess what happened a little after that? Oh, look, another crisis. Although they didn't call it Crisis this time. Flashpoint. This was 2011, I'm thinking, in around this time. Say on the screen? No, I don't see it. What happened is Barry Allen, his mother was killed and his father went to jail for it and everything else. He thought, I'm going to fix this. He goes back in time to stop whoever kills his mother. In doing so, he rewrites time. So in this new timeline, he doesn't have his powers, and Bruce Wayne isn't Batman, and there's all these things going on. Thomas Wayne is Batman. What happened in this new timeline is the burglar killed Bruce and not his parents, so his dad becomes Batman, and his mother goes crazy and becomes the Joker. Yeah. Shazam was 6 kids that combined into one. Cyborg was a big leader here. Atlantis and Themyscira, am I saying this right? Wonder Woman and Aquaman go to war. And there's Atlantis sinks part of the West Coast, and anyway, it rewrote everything for 6 months. And what really ticked me off is Booster Gold at this point was I guess it was a shining example of what you could do. It was fun. It was entertaining. It was a bright light. And at the very end, we got a shoehorned into this, and then, done. So it ended very poorly. So we get to the very end of Flashpoint. Barry goes to put everything back. As he's putting it back, the voice says, no, Barry, you have to do this. And we get the new 52. I'm not even going to put it up here because I hated the New 52. Let's put it this way. This ended the next week at the comic shop. They said, hey, we have your Justice League #1 and Nightwing #1. I said, great. Hey, by the way, my pull list, yeah, throw it away. What? I'm done. I'm not going to have you on hold for these ones that you got in for me already. I'm done. That's it. What they did is they erased everything. Like, they erased all the history. They're basically starting fresh. Hey, we're all this. And even little dumb things. They had all these characters from all over, and they all have Mandarin collars on their costumes. Everyone. Superman, Green Lantern, like everybody. Really. So we've never met before, but we all have the same fashion style. Jim Lee, I was running on fumes at that point. Anyway, Flashpoint and then New 52, I didn't like it. In fact, at the point I was at Chapters, which is up in here, Canada, Chapters is a bookstore, and like much like a Borders, which doesn't exist anymore in the States. And it was a good bookstore, and it was around Christmas time, and someone was middling about, what should I get my son for Christmas? And the employee was trying to help, and he's a big comic fan, and the employee said, well, there's this. It was basically a compilation of all the #1s of the New 52. It was their 52 new first issues. 52, I don't know why. Something that Dan, what's his name now? Dan Didio. I think Didiots fits better, but anyway, Dan Didio. And they all #1s. And I just was passing by, I said, is he a fan of DC Comics? Oh, I'm a big fan. Don't buy him this. And I explained why. And the employee said, hey, you want a job? No. But yeah, it was really, really poorly done, to the point where over time, they wrote it out. Now, there's one thing they did a little further back, in around the time, around here or around here. They did a thing called hypertime. Hypertime was basically you saying, everything exists. Don't worry about continuity, everything exists. Which was a cop-out. It didn't really go anywhere. Nothing really came of it. But they said, well, if we told the story, it exists. Well, that doesn't help for trying to keep things straight of who's who. But yeah. So over time, after Flashpoint and the New 52, after we had all that, some cracks started to show in the foundation. So they brought things in like Convergence and brought some things back, and a few things came back. The correct Superman came back. Superman from New 52 was, I don't know. I think there was too much editorial interference, and that's why he sort of was all over the place. They had one series where he was just getting started, so that was Action Comics. And they had another series where he's been established for a while, and he's wearing armor. He's Superman. What's he wearing armor for? And it turns out it's a Kryptonian suit, so he could just have like a little T-shirt on with the S. He hits that, and it all comes out. And like, why does Superman have armor? He's the least killable person in the universe, and he's got armor. Okay. So over time, that got taken out, and then Superman comes in, and they had some really dumb story after Convergence where Superman of the New 52 dies, and his essence combines with Superman that's from Convergence. So we have the original Kal-El is back. They have the combined history. And then about a year later, no, we don't talk about that. Oh, never mind. No, he's always been Superman. He's always been Superman. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. He's always Superman. Okay. So they're constantly trying to redo what they're doing. And they keep calling him Crisis. And they keep saying, well, this is a crisis. This is a crisis. Yeah, but it's like the boy who cried wolf. It's like you always say, this is a crisis, this is a crisis, this is a crisis, this is a crisis. And it's always going. And it's like, you're not resolving anything because you just come back later and tinker again. So then after a little while, we got then into Dark Knight's Metal. And this was, I'm not sure whose idea this was. Basically, it's the dark multiverse. And in every dark multiverse, Bruce Wayne is the badass. Now, I like Bruce Wayne as a character, but he's not the be-all, end-all. I'm sorry. So, look in the picture here. He was the darkest Green Lantern. He killed the rest of the Green Lantern Corps. He's the the Batman who laughs. He's got Joker venom, and he's just... And what else? He's super fast, and he's got Doomsday DNA, and he's got all these things. I didn't like it at all Dark Knight's metal. It just was, and it's based on some stuff about holy metals, and that's why the Joker never dies, and Batman can never kill him because he always keeps coming back. And it just was, yeah. And then we keep going, and then the current one right now is Dark Crisis. This is based on the Justice League has killed Pariah, who was one of the main characters of the first Crisis. He's the one who came. He's this guy down here in the bottom in green, kind of going, ooh. He was a scientist. He got sucked into the antimatter universe, and he always goes where there's the greatest danger. And so anyway, we get to Dark Crisis, and he's there, and he kills the Justice League. No, he doesn't. Much like Superman dies, and he'll never be the same back in 1992. Yeah. We all knew he was coming back. We all knew that. You don't kill Superman. Anyway, Dark Crisis is, so all the superheroes on the top of the Justice League, they've all disappeared. They're dead. The only one who survives is Black Adam. He is the only one who survives from that. And it turns out they didn't die. Big surprise. Now, this could be technically spoilers, but these issues have been out for a couple months. They all go to their perfect world. So John Stewart, Green Lantern, is in a world where he is a Green Lantern, but he retired, and it's a perfect world. And Barry Allen is in his perfect world. They're on their perfect world. And they sort out what's going on. And yeah, they're fighting to come back. So this is issue 1. At the point that's out now, issue 7. Yeah. So, to hop back to Crisis, they got rid of Earth 2. So they got rid of all the characters that were there. They sort of jammed them in together. So I talked about this in one of my other streams. I loved Infinity Inc. I thought this was a great series because it had a history to it. Infinity Inc. was the sons and daughters of heroes from the Justice Society, which is the one that was based in the 40s. So Hector Hall, who was a Silver Scarab, he was the son of Carter Hall. And Lyda Trevor, who was the daughter of Wonder Woman, and really great characters. And they got rolled in to the new universe, and it really it dampened their story. It didn't make it very good. So Earth 2 was gone, and these characters weren't very good. So we get to Dark Crisis, and for a lot of time before that, after we got through Crisis, Justice Society really gone. They disappeared. They weren't around. And now suddenly they're back again. Now, we did have the JSA where that sort of came in and went out. But, like a lot of the characters, they really didn't bring back in. It was really poorly done. And now in Dark Crisis 6, which is out now, we've got all the characters again, and they're back again. So they keep redoing it over and over and over and over again. And they're never really getting any resolution. It's the same thing all the time. Oh, no, the world's going to end. Oh, luckily we saved everything. Well, we've got a lot of things that we've got to be aware of now, and time has changed, and it's never going to be the same again. Yeah, give it a couple minutes, it'll be the same again. Just another couple years, it'll be done. So that's where we're at right now with Crisis. It's again and again and again and again. And even in in the 90s and 2000s, we had something where the Justice League are stuck in the past. They'll never go back again, and Nightwing takes over as the leader of the Justice League, and they bring them back. We knew they were coming back. Nice. But I guess the biggest problem I have with all of this, now some of it is entertaining reading for a while. Like it's something to pop in. Like The Death of Superman is an interesting read for a while. He's coming back, but it's cool. He has some good artists on there, like Dan Jurgens and things like that. It was all cool. But it makes me think back when I was a kid. You could pick up a comic, you could read it, and done. I don't recall any huge overarching stories you had to read in order to keep current with things. With Crisis, there were tie-ins. You had tie-ins of this. This is a Crisis tie-in. This is, and that sort of ties in together. And then with 0 Hour, you had all these different things. And 0 Hour was funny because this is the first issue and it's number 4. It was 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And the cover for 0 basically was blank. It was interesting. But you had to get, so you'd read some tie-ins for it. And any Crisis, not so bad for that. Infinite Crisis had a lot of different tie-ins. Final Crisis as well. Final Crisis had too many tie-ins. Flashpoint. Oh my goodness, Flashpoint. You have to read this and this and this before you read this. And after you read that, then you have to go to this. And then you have to go to this and get to this in order to see what this is before you get to this. And then that and this and that and the other thing. And Dark Knights, yeah, all over the place, all over the place. And Dark Crisis is, it is what it is, but it's kind of funny. Now, in looking at this too, one of the funny parts about this Dark Crisis is because they got rid of the Justice League, they said, now it's time for the new heroes to shine. Nobody wants the new heroes. Like, on the front there, right in the middle there, John Kent, Superman. I had no problem with John Kent when he was a kid because he was hanging out with Damian Wayne and they was cool. But then, for some reason, they decided to age him up. He was off with his grandfather, who did not die. Jor-El, come on. Like, it's like, there's only a couple truths. Granted, they changed that. There's always been a couple truths, they say in comics. Uncle Ben dies, Bucky dies. Well, they changed that in 2000 when Bucky doesn't die anymore. As you've seen some of the Marvel movies, Bucky doesn't die. He is the Winter Soldier now. And that was a retcon they did in 2000s. But, Krypton died. Jor-El didn't escape. Jor-El stayed with his wife and died. That's what it was. Oh, well, now he's alive and he's doing this. John was a 12-year-old. Now he's a 18-year-old, 19-year-old. And the thing is, they went all in with John on identity politics. He's, young gay man, and his boyfriend's got pink hair. I'm not, they're writing this to sort of, talk to the new generations, the new woke generations, and I don't like the word woke, the new, I don't know, just the new generations about let's do this and this. Those people aren't buying comics. Well, we made Superman, he's new and he's gay. Those people that you're trying to talk to don't buy comics. People buy comics, people like me, people in the 40s and 50s buy the comics, they don't care. Let's put it this way. Action Comics, after they got rid of the debacle that was the New 52, they went back to the correct numbering again. Over 1,000 issues. Son of Superman, ending issue 18. Yeah. And it wasn't that he was gay. I don't care. It's not something I'm going to read. I don't care about it. It's not that it doesn't affect me at all. I don't like the character John Kent. He could have dated 20 women at once. I don't care. He's not Superman. To try and just retire the old characters. And at this point, his father went off. Kal-El went off to go fight Warworld and liberate it. And he came back and said, oh, good, Superman's back. And back to where it was. He's even got the trunks, finally. It's been a while since we've had that. He's got the trunks. He's back to the costume. So basically everything they've done in the last 15 years, erased, gone, don't worry about it. And it's just, it's sad that they have to keep throwing these great things up against the wall and see what happens. It's for someone like me who's read that, like I said, in the 70s, 80s, I didn't need, a degree in comicology in order to read what was going on. Like even some of the things I really love from Marvel, like you could pick up Fantastic Four anywhere and read it. Oh, cool story. Right on. Because as long as you know the beats, Fantastic Four, family goes into space, cosmic rays, gets superpowers, saves the world from bad guys. Done. That's all you need to know. Batman, orphaned by a criminal, wants to make sure it never happens to anyone again. Batman's whole thing is not to punish the bad guys. He's to make sure that no one has to go through what he went through. That's his whole goal. Superman is just a shining light. He's there to inspire, not to lead and enslave. He's there to show them an example of what can be done. He's not there to raise them. He's not there to hurt them, to hurt humanity. He's there to help. That's why he doesn't do everything. He's there to help. Plus, he's only one person. It's just, yeah, it's the archetype. It's all it is. It's just good guys. Like this is our mythology. This is our Perseus and our Hercules and all these things. That's what this is these days. And it's going all over the place. And it really is, I'm not enjoying it. Now, I did say I did stop reading, and I have. Like, I don't collect anymore, but you can read these online. It's not hard to find them to read online. There's lots of places you can read them, so I'll just kind of look through. And I remember when I was a kid, I would sit down with a comic, and I'd be good for 20 minutes, half an hour. And, oh, that's cool, it's cool. Now it's, oh, done? That's it? 18 pages? That's it? And how many of those were splash pages? 6? Wow. Holy smokes. So it's just, the Crises It's been way too many. And it doesn't really solve anything. It always goes back to where it is. I understand the whole thought process of like, it's what's happening in Hollywood these days where like, let's rewrite it. Let's rewrite it. Let's rewrite it. Whatever happened to original characters? Whatever happened to that? I do feel quite sad over, the last little while that, a lot of the movies I love are quirky and great. And the movies that I saw in the 80s, I will never see again in my lifetime because there's no way you get away with that anymore. Star Wars was a gamble. And George knew what he was doing, and he got the rights to the toys because he knew that's where the money is. And the stuff that they're doing right now with Star Wars, like 3, 4, and 5 are great. Don't ask me about the rest. I don't care. And the rumors I'm reading about Indiana Jones from Dictor von Doomcock, check it out, DVD on YouTube. He's funny, but he seems to be on the money for a lot of things. I don't like where they're going with the Indiana Jones. To me, there's 1, 2, 3. What about Crystal Skull? What about Crystal Skull? The Last Crusade was amazing. Loved it. So all we're seeing is rewriting. We're not saying anything new, and it's really, that makes me sad because there's so many great new things out there. But it is what it is. So here we are now. What's that, 35 minutes? I've been talking for a long time, and it's funny I can do this. I just get in here and go, well, let's just rant about this for a while. Not even rant. Let's just talk about this for a while. One day people will join in, but I guess I just need to get to doing it for a while, and people say, oh, hey, here's another stream from Dave. Let's see what's going on this week. And I know it takes time for these things to catch on. So that is sort of my take on things. DC has got a real problem with all these crises. And like I say in the thumbnail, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. A crisis is, just you can't keep rewriting it and say, never mind. So anyway. So that is my take on it. And by the way, that's my take on it. If you have other thoughts on the DC universe and you've got things like, hey, more power to you, man. It's just how I feel about it as someone who's been reading it for almost 50 years. And I say that and I feel so darn old. But still on the other side of the ground. It's all good. My sensei used to say, every day above ground's a good day. Probably not a great thing if you were a coal miner, but yeah, every day above ground's a good day. And I have tons of really good things going on in my life, and I can't be upset about that. And if this is the thing that's pissing me off, there are a whole lot of worse problems to have. So that is it. That is my take on things today. Hey, everyone, I'm glad that you came to check out my stream, or you're seeing my stream afterwards. I'm seeing throughputs on it where I have several hundred views of it a week after I do it, because I know I didn't have anyone looking when I was doing it, which is fine and dandy too, which I'm glad you were checking it out. And I am happy to do this. I'm having a lot of fun doing this on a weekly basis. So expect a whole lot more. And if you have any ideas of things you'd like for me to talk about, or say, hey, can you talk about this sometime? Let me know. There is the request from Jerry to talk about tricorder, and I will do that soon. I'm so darn busy. I had a website redesign that landed in my lap 2 weeks ago. So that was a lot of last week dealing with that. But client's happy. So there you go. But that's just what's going on. So my days get pretty busy. So I'm going to sign off here. I will thank everyone for watching this after the fact, and I will see you all next week. And also don't forget to check out my channel. I do videos on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and I talk about whatever. Yesterday this morning was Dresden Files. Finally finished the book. After 17 books, I finished them all, and interesting. Anyway, that's it for me from Dave here at DCB Effects. So we'll talk to you all later.